Hi everyone, Sean here. Um, as you can see, I have a sort of a Padlet um, sort of set up to do some talking about reading response, in particular reading notebooks, which I also mean to include post-it work and other kinds of reading response and decision making that students can make to practice skills to have an authentic reading life. And I'm really hoping that talking about some of these things will help point the way to a discussion about how authentic reading assessment can be a window into students' thinking, can be a window into assessing their development of vocabulary skills, fluency skills, and I would argue most importantly, developing their comprehension skills. So let me go over some things. I guess the first thing I'd want to say is we want the, I would suggest that, we root the skills or we root their notebook work and their post-it work TK through 5 in skills, but it's integrated into their reading life. It's part of their authentic reading life. So here's an example of just how students could put together a reading notebook. Um, A lot of you have this. Um, Grades 2 through 5, just a composition book. Um, it can be personalized, taping some pictures on it, drawing on it, things like that. Just an example. I suppose in the lower grades that could be, a folder to put post-its or even a notebook to put post-its. Um, but it doesn't have to be. I know there are not a lot of collection, quote unquote, or archiving practices for reading response that I know of in K1. It tends to be sort of book by book, but in 2 through 5, there tends to be a some sort of notebook. So over time, you're seeing progress. Um, I think an important principle in terms of reading response is to menu the skills for them. So over time, we're teaching students different ways to respond, and we want it to be part of a menu so that on a daily basis, one of the expectations is that they're making a choice about how to respond based on the book that they're reading. I really thought this was a great anchor chart for, you know, TK through 1 especially, but even in the upper grades. I mean, I think what's great about this chart is it's very simple to more complex ways of students to show their thinking using post-its. So you can see on the left here, there's kind of a symbology created for different kinds of response when a student finds something that's funny, important, surprising, favorite part, is confused somewhat, is making a prediction. But you can see that on the right side of that, there's the way that a student can use their early writing skills to write those things down. And I know in TK through 1 in your classes that there's kids that can do this work. So you can get kids started with this, and then they can do longer writing when they're ready for it. Get them ready for the actual reader's notebook by second grade. I thought this was a pretty nice example of a very vibrant, alive reading notebook. You can see that most of the work that this student has done is on post-its. They seem to be reading Esperanza Rising, um, but they've archived it in the notebook. So that's one way to do it. Um, anyway, you can see there's all kinds of response here. There's some predictions and finding out that their predictions are correct, and some real authentic response, and like, no, don't marry Tom, and predictions, and this is a real personal response. You can see embedded in all of this work is so much summarizing and understanding big ideas and understanding conflict and resolution and all of that. So this student is clearly empowered to respond on a daily basis. I think an important part of making it authentic is that it's also routinized. So I think that there's some routines and expectations created. I used to say to my fourth and fifth graders that they had to do a half page of notebook work every day. So from the menu that they learned over time, their expectation was to make choices about how they would respond to the book based on what they're reading and do at least a half a page. That often led to one page, more than a page, depending on their authentic reactions to the book. But I think creating some expectations that might include a minimum level of work about how they would put dates and things like that on it is really important. So rooted in skills, but part of authentic reading life. It's menued for them over time. It's routinized. I wanted to show you some examples of what I think are some really interesting and nice ways that students have responded to reading. I like this as sort of a lower grade version, a primary version of, I don't know, I'm guessing, what do you think? Late first, second, maybe early third. The way the student has retold their book by using both sort of an icon or an illustration to show beginning, middle, and end, but also, summarizing the beginning, middle, and end as well. I thought that was a really interesting way. That could be something that is menued. Um, I thought this was sort of a nice example of main idea detail work in nonfiction. Main idea, tornado is a big windstorm that causes a lot of damage. I love that sort of student friendly, in their own language sort of idea. And then a lot of the evidence to support that main idea. And same on the next page. So, those are some examples of the kinds of things that students can do. Now, I think it's worth noting that, you know, depending on where you are in your teaching and in the unit of study, that there's going to be certain days where there's a must do. You must, um, you know, you're all going to do this particular work. You all are going to summarize chapter 8, or you all are going to write down the character's main conflict and keep track of it over time. Like, those are all things that we can expect of them because we're maybe sort of dipsticking a particular skill, or we want them all to try it at least the one particular time. I thought this was a great anchor chart that showed, taught kids in nonfiction when to stop to show thinking, when to stop and prepare for talk, when to stop and jot some things down. And I think there's implications in this for both post-it work and reading notebook work. Okay, so I like that a lot. So you get the idea about supporting the work by creating routines and expectations, just like we do in the reading, by putting them on menus, by encouraging them to make it a part of their real response as readers, in addition to trying out particular skills because we just taught them and we want to see. I thought this was a really interesting example of, in the more upper grades, to use language stems to get longer writing started. And you can see that the stems are organized by reading skills, or a particular part of the book that's important, like setting or characters. Okay, so I thought this was great, and another way to menu the work and scaffold the work for kids. So I sort of feel like I'm going long. This is my first screencast, but I hope it's presented some things that give you some things to think about. I think that pointing the way towards this being real assessment, I think that looking at students' post-it work and notebook work can be a part of your conferences, can be material for writing things down in terms of how they're doing with summarizing. Are they making predictions? Are they reacting, with curiosity? Are they doing vocabulary work, etc.? I think that uh, it can be really important for dipstick assessment work that I told you about. I think that you could have a routine of collecting, a quarter of the class on Mondays and another quarter of the class on Tuesdays, and spending 10 minutes kind of going through the work and getting a sense of what students are really doing. So part of conferences, part of like sort of after hours, uh, looking through and analyzing it. I think using the notebook work for dipsych assessments. And I think in our community, in Tustin especially, there's implications for taking, for iPad work, for taking pictures and archiving it or sending it to you or uploading it to Google Docs, any number of things. Um, what I want to leave you with is kind of a thought about adopting some of these practices or adding some of these practices or ideas into the work you're already doing, is to uh, kind of acknowledge that there are so many choices out there. And if you look at Pinterest and Vimeo and YouTube and all those different places, there's so many ideas for notebook work. Um, at the end of the day, we have to make some choices and stick with those choices about what kind of work we want them to do, how we're going to menu it for them, how we're going to set up the notebooks or the post-it work, what symbology we're going to use, etc., what materials we're going to use. But we make those choices, and I would really recommend living with those choices for a good 6 months and really trying to get better within the confines of those choices before making new choices. And I only say that out of way too much experience in changing too much, changing every couple of weeks, getting excited by the new idea, but not really working with the old idea. So um, I hope this has been helpful. Um, you'll go now to the well, you're on the Padlet page now, if I understand my idea here. You're on the Padlet page now, and so after watching the video, I hope you'll respond in some way and prepare for your conversation at 2:30. Thank you so much. And for better or for worse, this is the first one, and I look forward to hearing your responses. And I hope that in your response on Padlet, you'll add new ideas. You'll critique the ideas I've shared. You'll share which ideas you want to integrate now, what new things you've thought of, what things you do now that you think would make the things I'm sharing, even better. So anyway, I should end this now. Thank you. Bye.